All right, Shalom. I'd like to start up saying, Call Halayim La Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Harikak Radash Ma'amath. Double honors to the elder apostles, the great millstone, double honors to our elder apostle as well, our one down here in the Lions Den camp. Salutations to the argument that are pushing the truth, sincerity, and truth. And peace and blessings to the men, women, and children that believe in the name of Yahweh Shem Shai. All right, I'm Khanak Sa'am by Yashar Aleph from the Lions Den of Yashar camp. And this is another Lions Den news and prophecy. And you know how we start them out. This is 2 Ezra chapter 15, verse 1. It says, Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. And that's what we should need to keep our minds occupied on, this prophecy, man. Letting the elect know how closer we are to salvation, and letting the 2/3 of these other nations how close they are to their doom. All right. So this particular article goes into Russia's war games and the threat to NATO, right? Because Russia is going to be the one that's going to be able to take this beast down, according to Revelation 13. All right, let's go into that real quick. Well, let's read a little bit of this article and then we'll go into that, possibly. All right. It says, days after Polish and NATO forces scrambled to shoot down Russian drones that have flown into Poland's airspace, Russian troops gathered in neighboring Belarus for large-scale war games. Indian and Iranian troops also participated. I was doing a lesson on not this particular Zapad war games, but in response to them setting up for those war games, Poland sent like 40,000 troops over to that area on the coast of Belarus, because you know what I'm saying, that's where you know what I'm saying, they're having all that activity, and those drones flying over into Poland airspace, which triggered the whole thing. All right. It says, Russian troops gathered in neighboring Belarus for large-scale war games. Indian and Iranian troops also participated. The Zapad 25 exercise included a simulated nuclear strike, although they were billed as defensive analysts and said they were designed to intimidate Europe. All right. That's putting pressure on Europe. It says, in total, 19 drones crossed into Poland last Wednesday. Moscow allies claimed that they had strayed there accidentally, but days later, another Russian drone violated Romanian airspace. Warsaw said the incursion was a test of NATO's defense capabilities and invoked Article 4, which brings a threat to the attention of its council. NATO then launched an operation to bolster its eastern flank. Donald Trump, he said he would impose tougher sanctions on Russia, but only if all NATO members stop buying Russian oil and gas and slap heavy tariffs on China. All right, so that's an economical, that's an economical war front. What he poses those sanctions, he's trying to crush the Russian economy. But there's another article that I want to read probably later on. Kind of behind on my lessons a little bit. I got a real bad toothache, but you know, working on it. But yeah, so whether a spokesperson for Russia basically said, like, you've been doing these tariff shit for a while and it hasn't affected our economy, right? They got the, you know what I'm saying, the organization of the BRICS that's going to help them financially, like the EU financially helps NATO and America. All right. It says the sheer scale of incursion into Poland makes it clear that this was a calculated escalation by Vladimir Putin, said the Daily Telegraph, embodied by Trump's intelligence. He wants to see if NATO had the resolve to respond. Poland has painful recent experience of invasion and occupation, said the Independents. So it's Prime Minister Donald Tusk warning that the prospect of conflict in Europe is closer than at any time since the Second World War. The second war has passed. The third woe comes quickly. See that? That's what Russia's gearing up to. So let's pause it right there and let's go into Revelation chapter 13. It says, Revelation 13:1, it says, I stood upon the sands of the sea and saw a beast rise out of the sea. All right. Having 7 heads and 10 horns, upon its head 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. All right. So the original EU was a construction. It was the EEC was constructed of 27 nations. So ultimately, this is like, because the beast could represent Rome in the scriptures. The beast could also represent America, NATO. You know, right now it's going into the infrastructure or the creation of EU, NATO, and America. All right. It says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were like the bear. Like, so basically from Rome, Rome, because the leopard represents Alexander, and the feet were like a bear. The feet being the end of a thing, just like how the 10 toes were in the time of the 10 toes, right, in the book of Daniel, right? And his mouth was at the mouth of a lion, all right? That represents Britain, right? And the dragon gave him his power and his great seat and great authority, right? It says, and I saw one of his heads as if were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. So basically, that head that was wounded was Rome, all right? And all the world wondered at the beast. His deadly wound was healed. How was the deadly wound healed? By America. All right, really, America, NATO, and the EU. All right, but America's pushing all the draconian measures that Rome used to push. All right, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast? Who was able to make war with him?" Right. Let's go back to that bear part. All right. So now that bear is going to be Russia. The bear is going to be equipped enough to make war with the beast, man. Russia's going to have enough, be equipped. That's going into Ezekiel 38. Russia's going to have enough to take down NATO, EU, and America, along with their allies. See that? So reading that again, it says, so it's Prime Minister Donald Tusk warning that the prospect of conflict in Europe is closer than at any time since the Second World War, has to be taken seriously. This was the first time in NATO's history that its member states have had to directly attack Russian forces, albeit unmanned ones, right? So those are the drones that they've been shooting down. All right. Fortunately for all Trump's evacuations, NATO was still strong enough to answer the call. Yet there are kinks in the alliance's armor, said the Times. 2 of its members, Hungary and Slovakia, are virtual allies of Russia. See there? And the leader of the U.S., it's the most powerful member, threats the Ukraine war as a business opportunity. Trump is making European nations buy U.S. weapons to give to Kyiv. Now he's trying to stop them buying trying to stop them from buying whoever wrote this shit trash, from buying Russian gas to boost sales of United States liquefied natural gases. All right. So now Trump is trying to find money ways to affect Russia, right? To kind of put some pressure on them, because if it costs money to go to war, man. It takes money to fight a war, and if these sanctions would work, and Europe would stop buying gas from Russia, right? And China's buying gas from Russia. If Europe would put tariffs on China for buying that gas from Russia, it would put pressure on China and the Russian economy, and would make it harder for them to fight the war, because they won't have the money and the funding. All right, so in America, we'll be making money off of not only individuals buying weapons to help to fund aid to Ukraine, but the buying of liquefied gases from America. I said, ever since Russian tank rolled into Ukraine, Western strategists have been asking who the Kremlin would target next. And Mark Allman in the Daily Mail said, the consensus was that small military weak nations on Russia's borders, such as Latvia and Estonia, would be the target. Yes, yet instead Putin picked Poland, a country which spends nearly 5% of its GDP on defense, the highest share of any NATO member, and has the third largest standing army in the alliance after the United States and Turkey. But you're going to see Turkey fade over to Russia, man. All right, does this suggest we are teetering on an edge of World War III? All right, these warnings certainly expose our weaknesses, said Edward Lucas in the Times. The U.S. insists rightly that Europe must take the lead in standing up to Russia. They're not going to do it. But without it, there's nothing like a unified European alliance. Political stance vary wildly, while even supportive nations such as France, Spain, and Belgium flinch at the risk and the cost. But you got to understand, Russia has the most deadliest nuclear arsenal in the world. All right, so that comment in Revelation 13, who was like unto the beast, who was able to make war with the beast, that's Russia. See that? All right. I'll read a little bit more of this, but basically you get the point. You got Russia doing strategic moves. You know how you like when you're in the boxing ring and like you throw a couple jabs at your opponent, right? But then you flinch a jab, or you flinch a jab first just to see how they're gonna cover up and defend themselves. That's what Russia's doing. That's why they would do, if you think about it, they were doing the same thing, sending not drones but manned aircraft off the coast of Alaska, and they'll make America scramble jets, and then they'll fly back into their zone, right? So it's really a provocation, and seeing the reaction of Europe and with really NATO and America. How are they going to respond to these strategic moves that Russia is doing? And the answer is they don't really have a real response, because they don't want to just jump to conclusions and just do some shit, right? And fuck around, and then they'd be like, you know what I'm saying? And Russia be like, oh no, we weren't really doing that. Then they incite something, and Russia has to come on the defense, and that's what, like, you know what I'm saying? You know how you just flinch at somebody and they make them jump, and they're so troubled with fear they hit you, and then that just starts the fight. So really, we're on the brinks of World War III, man. It's right there at the door. It's just, we have to have the Revelation 13 and 16 to be implemented, As soon as that's implemented, it's a wrap. Missiles are going to start flying. All right, so I just want to touch on that a little bit. Lord willing, lesson edifying and serve His purpose for the hopeful elect, the ones that truly believe in the name of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. With that, like Sekar Halayim, La Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai, Bashim Harakak Wadash, Ma'amath. Double honors to the elder apostles, the great millstone, and double honors to our elder apostle as well, Laharawan down here in the Lions Den camp. Salutations to the icon that are pushing the truth, sincerity, and truth. And peace and blessing to the men, women, and children that believe in the name of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. We're almost out of here. Shalom.